Approval of minutes, non-agenda public comment, Trust San Diego presentation detailing community opposition to the proposed surveillance technology, action discussion item, recommendation to City Council on smart streetlights and ALPR technology, and then adjournment. Start with roll call. Khaled Alexander,
Present.
Mihir Balari,
Present.
Robert Lee Brown. Not present. Lee Duran.
Present.
Tora Gentry Kelso. Not present. Sid Martinez. Here. Pega Parsi.
Here.
And myself, Ikanyanetu, I'm here. We'll move on to the approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Do not have a copy of that. We will read them out. Sorry about that. May 31st meeting, all appointed members were in attendance. Dr. Robert Brown joined via Zoom for Just Cause. Motions that were passed included the acceptance of the minutes of the meeting for April 27th with one adjustment. Khaled Alexander requested and the board agreed to add the following to April's minutes. The question is directed to the city legal representatives, and the question is as follows. Could the mayor's budget request be considered soliciting the technology before the Privacy Advisory Board has had a chance to give a yes or no recommendation to the City Council and Mayor's office? Motions that also passed included the election of parliamentarian for Dr. Brown, nominated and unanimously approved by the board, and the election of the recorder, Lee Duran, who was nominated and unanimously approved by the board. Other matters discussed included update from the Smart Streetlights and ALPR First Pass Subcommittee. Committee Chair Pega Parsi provided a presentation that covered feedback from the May 25th and May 27th listening sessions in the community, actions taken by the subcommittee, and information received to date. Also discussed was an update from the Public Communications Subcommittee. I provided a verbal update on the activities in the subcommittee and planned actions. Also included were a presentation by Brian Hofer, Executive Director of Secure Justice. Mr. Hofer discussed via Zoom the activities of the Oakland Privacy Advisory Council and responded to various community and board questions. There was a presentation by Dr. Donald Drips. Dr. Drips provided information on legal frameworks impacting the San Diego surveillance privacy issues and responded to various questions. And last but not least, presentation by Trust San Diego and San Diego Police Department follow-up Q&A was deferred to this meeting. Without further ado, raise a motion to approve of the previous month's minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes of the
May 23rd, May 31st meeting.
I second that. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of approval? Aye. All opposed? Let the record show that it was unanimously approved by the board. So we just saw an agenda item for public comment on agenda item 2, approval of minutes. We have one comment. Let us, we'll redo the vote.
Sorry to not raise my hand sooner. Thank you. I just wanted to offer a quick procedural item about the meeting minutes process. There was a really good lecture from Brian Hofer from the City of Oakland and their Privacy Commission. That sort of lecture I want to be able to review and study and learn from. And I just hope it's really important for yourselves to make these meetings, the audio or the Zoom, available to the public in the future. And I hope you're working on that issue because we really need to study these meetings and what's said and talked about. I mean, it's an incredibly important part of this process. Good luck how to be working on this. I know it's a little slow right now, but it should be coming in soon. So thank you.
If there are any comments on Zoom,
We have 3 people with their hands raised in the queue for public comment on item 2. First up, the original.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Blair was saying, but also, I mean, you guys,
Your comments?
hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Can you hear me?
We can't hear you, so we'll come back to you.
What? You can't hear me?
Next
Hello?
up, we have caller ending in 8731.
You couldn't hear, but you totally responded. Does that make any sense? All right, this is Truth, and I love reading minutes, also like laughing at ridiculous
Kind of recess
stuff,
for
obviously.
5 minutes just to fix some technical issues.
Okay, it's hilarious. Okay, so I love reading minutes, and yet there was nothing to read. So because of that, I have a serious and simple question. How is anyone in the public supposed to provide comment on approval of the minutes when the minutes aren't even available?
I just had to mute it to make sure that we could do it. Let's try again with the original.
Okay, can you hear me now? Hello? Is this on purpose? Are you guys doing this on purpose? Because I could hear Truth and I don't understand what's happening. Can you hear me? Now you're not going to answer because, okay.
We're still having some issues technically, so let's just give 5 minutes to figure this out. We'll recess. Try caller ending in 8731.
All right, I'm back. How's the reception? How's the technical stuff going?
There we go. Okay, we're going to restart your time.
Great, thank you. All right, this is Truth once again. All right, we're starting here. So I love reading minutes, and yet there was nothing to read, only things to laugh at. So Because of that, I have a serious and simple question. How is anyone in the public supposed to provide comment on approval of the minutes when the minutes aren't even available for the public to view online? So in the future, the minutes need to be contained within the posted agenda packet PDF files, or at least a very short summary of the minutes, whatever would suffice better. The other items as well should contain at least a short summary description so the public can have some kind of idea of what to expect in the upcoming presentations. Otherwise, they may be deterred from commenting if they feel unsure of the topic or think something isn't of interest or important to them when it actually may be. So we can see there's some future improvements to be made, including on the technical end, but that's okay. It gave me a laugh, and that's a good way to start a meeting. So thank you. You can move on to the next caller.
Thank you. Your time is up. We have no more callers in the queue. Oh. Well, the original we see, we'll let you go too. 1 minute.
Oh my gosh, you'll let me go too. I was on before and then you guys lowered my hand. Like what you guys are doing is ridiculous. This is a very important matter. You can't even post stuff on the agenda for people to see. And you guys continue to put things on other meetings because you don't have enough time, but you don't even start your meeting on time. That is a severe problem.
point.
And we have to now address items from last meeting because you couldn't do it before, but you have all of these issues that keep you from being able to do this. And this is supposed to be providing the public with a space to talk about a surveillance ordinance that's coming down upon them. And this is basically your last meeting before you guys got to give the mayor some information. So, I mean, this is very negligent on your guys' behalf to not have all of this squared away. It's not that hard because you're using the same chambers that the city council uses. I don't understand why you can't use the same platform as they use to make sure that these meetings go in a conductive manner, because this is something that the people need to be aware of. You can't just be providing an agenda with no information on it.
That concludes public comment on item number 2.
For the record, the board has been very insistent that the meetings get posted as soon as possible. So I think the public comments only echo the sentiment that we're feeling there. So thank you for that. If there's any board comments, otherwise we'll redo the vote for approval of the minutes as stated. All in favor?
Aye.
The record show that it was unanimous. Moving on to item 3, non-agenda public comment. We have one in-person comment for smart kiosk, or for smart kiosk by Blair Beekman.
I only get 1 minute, not 2 minutes on this day. Okay, with 53 seconds, can I have the timer over? I'm hoping that we can improve upon recent privacy laws and protections with smart streetlights and kiosk data collection. The city of Berkeley has given some really good examples how we can practice better civil protections with smart streetlight data collection use that we should really be looking into. To ask and demand.
This is for non-agenda public comment. I think that's
Yeah,
related
and
to
I
the
am.
agenda.
And I am, and how smart kiosks, I first should have said smart kiosks is part of a whole, there should be a centralized way we talk about our projects in the future. Smart streetlights and master mobility plans are a part of that whole process. I'm not gonna have enough time today. This really should be a day the public should be allowed 2 minutes to speak. Thank you.
We have 3 callers in the queue for non-agenda public comment, starting with the original.
Wow, you guys do not waste any time coming down on the public with them trying to talk about stuff that is really important. I mean, you guys It's rather ridiculous. You should let Blair just talk. But this is the thing, is that you guys don't even give us enough time to address anything. And you don't even have that many speakers in the queue. So you act like you got 50 speakers waiting to speak. So you're only giving us 1 minute. You guys are very good in line with all of these other boards trying to silence the people, all while you say, we need the publics to comment. We need them to come in. That's why we're giving them no information on the agenda. That's why we're cutting their time to speak. Either you want to hear what the people have to say or you don't. So don't virtue signal like you do and then give the people 1 minute when there is nobody in here trying to talk to you guys. You want to get in and get out. This is a very serious issue and you guys refuse to act like it because you don't even start your meeting on time. You can't even finish your agendas on time. And you know why this
Thank
is.
you. Your
So yeah,
time is up. Next caller ending in 8731.
It's truth. It was great to finally watch a PAB meeting on YouTube. Thanks for the upload. But when it's possible, get a decent camera or phone and set it up on a tripod to record future meetings. I did enjoy hearing the historical fact that there's no security without liberty. The Fourth Amendment was also referenced, which says in part, quote, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be violated, end quote. I also heard a point from a speaker about how spy cameras only work if somebody's already dead. Very true. It appears that some police officers no longer want to do their jobs and they're just relying on a bunch of tech. But of course, we don't have enough police officers due to the city council's demands that they get the deadliest clot shot ever unleashed upon people in human history. So a lot of them are never coming back or they're dead. And you can thank people like Shani Rivera for that sick, sad, new normal nightmare. Board member from the Oakland Privacy Advisory Board that spoke did an incredible job of giving you all advice that you absolutely need to take to deal with the corrupt city council that San
Thank
Diego
you.
has.
That's time.
Moving to our next speaker, Maya Little-Sanya.
Hi, I'd just like to encourage everyone listening online or in chambers, if you care about matters of surveillance of any kind, that you contact your city council members, because ultimately, regardless of what the Privacy Advisory Board recommends or doesn't recommend, the city council is the one who makes the decisions. And so call them, email them relentlessly to say no to mass surveillance of any kind in San Diego. Again, a Privacy Advisory Board only offers advice that the city council may very well reject and move forward with anyway. So go ahead, and especially if you live in Whitburn's district, Campbell, Marnie Von Wilpert's, you need to be calling them and letting them know this is not something you want as their constituent. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next speaker, Dr. Lawana Richmond.
So I've been following this now for a few years, and I just ask that we follow the spirit of what people want in terms of transparency and notification. And when things are not noticed properly or actions are taken out of order, it erodes the public trust. So if this is really about public safety, please respect us enough to not treat us like idiots.
Moving to our next speaker, Glenda Ginsburg.
I feel there should definitely be surveillance cameras. I feel it's very helpful to the police to catch people who have committed offense.
Ma'am, this is not
And
agenda
I
public
very
comment.
strongly believe that
Ma'am, this is
it
not
doesn't
agenda public
interfere in
comment.
people's privacy. I don't know what.
Folks, I need to remind you, this is non-agenda public comment. If you're calling about the Smart Streetlight program, please wait until item 6, and then we'll be happy to take your comment. And that concludes non-agenda public comment.
For the record, the Privacy Advisory Board does not have city clerk assistants for boards and commissions. So as it pertains to getting things posted and having things read out on time, something that we want to get out there. Thanks. We also have quite a few comments that are submitted in person here. So ultimately, the time allotted per person is dictated by how many that we see coming in. We'll move on then to item 4, Trust San Diego presentation detailing community opposition to the proposed surveillance technology. You have the floor.
Y'all hear me? Okay. Good evening, everyone. We're here on behalf of Trust SD. My name is Lucky Aiden. I'm the youth organizer at PANA, Partnership for the Advancement. Can y'all hear me now? Is that better? Okay. So like I said, we're here on behalf of Trust SD. My name is Lucky Aiden. I'm the youth organizer at PANA, Partnership for the Advancement of New Americans. I, along with my 2 colleagues here, are part of the Trustee SD Coalition. We would like to thank the Privacy Advisory Board for hosting this meeting and let us talking about transparency and privacy. Next slide, please. Like I said, PANA, along with 35 other members, are part of the Trust SD Coalition, and here's a full list of them. Next slide, please. So today we're going to be talking about the dangers of ALPR, talk about and answer questions about Ubicquia platform and the community harms of the smart streetlights and ALPR. I will pass it off to Nancy and she'll kick us off with the dangers of ALPR. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Nancy Relaford. My pronouns are she and her. I'm an organizer with the group Showing Up for Racial Justice San Diego, SURGE, as Director of Safety and Security for the UC San Diego Library until retiring in 2016. I learned the difficulty of protecting both safety and privacy in a public space. And I saw the increasing risks to privacy rights as surveillance technology and the surveillance tech industry evolved. I'm going to talk about ALPR, Automated License Plate Recognition, or readers. I'll start by noting that we still don't even know, as far as the last I heard, what vendor or technology SDPD are proposing for ALPR, or what capabilities it may have. But ALPR technology in general has a track record of questionable effectiveness and serious privacy harm. There we are. The picture on the left here with the big blue dot is an ALPR report showing San Diego Police ALPR hit ratio for the year 2019. At that time, SDPD was operating vehicle-mounted ALPR units and contracting with Vigilant Motorola. Detections here refers to all individual license plates captured by ALPR units, and hits are when a detected license plate is on a hot list of plates being looked for at the time of detection. In 2019, as you can see here, it's too small here, but I'll tell you. In 2019, SDPD collected a total of 86,729 detections of license plates. That's the big blue circle. In case you can't see it, there's a very tiny slice in that pie, a thin line at 12 o'clock. That line represents the hits, a grand total of 37 hits for the year 2019. 37 hits out of 86,729 detections. And these percentages are pretty representative across agencies using ALPR. On average, fewer than 1% of ALPR records are associated with any crime or alert. And that's not just a low positive return. The big blue area shows ALPR's negative impact on privacy. Only 37 hits, but all of those license plate records were retained for future searches and investigations, just in case. But the police reassure us repeatedly that ALPR data is just a picture of the license plate. If you look at the photo on the right, that shows an actual license plate image captured by ALPR from a CNN screen grab. It was provided in response to a private individual in San Leandro who submitted a PRA request for ALPR records of his own license plate and went public with the results. This is his car in his driveway with his children getting out. Photos showing much more than just your license plate, part or all of the vehicle, people in and around it, surroundings, even minutia like dents and bumper stickers are captured along with a time-stamped record of your location, so that over time your movements, places you visit, people you associate with are all available for future searches by law enforcement with no wrongdoing or suspicion to justify it. Next slide, please. Accuracy is also a fail. The known error rate for ALPR hits on license plates is at least 10%. ALPR errors have led to an unknown number of false positives, resulting in innocent drivers and passengers being pulled over and detained, sometimes at gunpoint. The impact is greatest on Black and brown people, immigrants, and other groups already subject to bias and over surveillance. Even erroneous police encounters may create or add to criminal records, and police stops can be traumatic, dangerous, or even fatal. And finally, next slide. Thank you. There are many reasons why collecting and storing massive amounts of ALPR data threatens everyone's privacy and safety. I want to highlight a new threat. ALPR data can and will be used to track and prosecute or sue people seeking medical care that has been outlawed in their home state. This also threatens San Diegans, medical providers, and ordinary people who help someone seeking an abortion, gender-affirming surgery, or other care. We've already seen this with ICE and other federal agencies pursuing ALPR data for immigration enforcement. ALPR data isn't only vulnerable to hacking that can be somewhat mitigated by encryption. The much more common, everyday, documented threat is informal sharing between individuals or agencies, exemptions for task forces and other collaborations, commercial data vendors, and misuse or abuse of authorized access. Departments throughout California, including San Diego, have been found to be sharing ALPR data illegally with inadequate policy enforcement and audit procedures. In short, ALPR technology enables dangerous, warrantless, and unwarranted mass surveillance, collecting and storing personal data on huge numbers of individuals who are under no suspicion and threatening the safety and privacy of all of us. SDPD has not provided sufficient information to demonstrate that they understand these privacy risks and can be trusted to protect the community from them. We ask the board to oppose or not recommend this proposal. Now I'll pass it on to Jacob.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Could we go to the next slide, please? So, hello, everyone. My name is Jacob Vandehei. I'm a D3 resident, a member of the Democratic Socialists, and a biomedical engineer. In my career, I specialize in studying human performance. I do a lot of human subject research for my laboratory, and part of my training focuses on protecting personally identifiable information and personal health information as much as possible. I take PII very seriously. I've reviewed SDPD's proposal and the 80 questions they've answered for you. And I've got a few questions about these smart streetlights and the SDPD use policy that I hope you'll consider before your vote tonight. I'd like to start by highlighting the previous smart streetlight program. Cost overruns are endemic in large infrastructure projects, but often not budgeted for. Last time, the city required an additional $1.3 million to upkeep the 3,000 smart streetlights. City staff undershot the cost for maintenance by roughly 50% per camera, and further audits by UCSD found that less than 1 out of 10 were actually reporting pedestrian data per the contract terms. Are there any diligence being done to prevent similar cost overruns for these cameras coming up? Are there clawback clauses within this contract if these services aren't meeting expectations? Can San Diego exit this if the services aren't performing as expected? Another consideration is, why is Ubicquia the only company being considered here? Back in 2020, when the city was trying to renew the first 3,000 cameras, Ubicquia was the proposed contract. There was a proposed contract for $7 million with them. Within that was 10% or $700,000 was a payment for their services in 2020 while the cameras were off. There were also terms in that contract to allow the city to exchange 1,000 cameras for future credits on a replacement. So are there similar stepping stones or terms built into this for the city to access those previous 3,000 cameras? Next slide, please. So this is the Ubicquia APAI Smart Streetlight. The first item I'll draw your attention to is the cameras themselves. So there are 2 cameras embedded in each of the 500 devices here. Each of SDPD's 9 presentations to district community groups specified there would be 500 smart streetlight cameras. 500 cameras was a term that was frequently used by Officer Jordan. However, later police budget meetings stated that there would be 1,000 cameras used, 500 devices. Does SDPD intend to limit itself to the 500 cameras it presented to the community, or will it use 1,000? Up above those cameras, you can see the PoE and port that stands for Powered Ethernet, which supports third-party camera and device integration. Companies like Ubicquia don't sell this product in a vacuum. They're always looking to generate future profits, and the most effective way to do that is to continually sell add-ons, upgrades, and new sensors. In investor calls, they highlight the capability of adding additional surveillance equipment into this smart streetlight platform. So, will SDPD need to submit additional use policy requests for things like traditional cameras, which can be mounted into these? Or will the number of cameras grow from the quoted 500 to a possible 2,000? What is the use plan for additional technology purchased in the future that requires the smart streetlights to function? As Nancy said earlier, the ALPR system, Ubicquia does not manufacture its own ALPR system. Within this 80 questions that SDPD answered for you, they did say that they would be subcontracting out to a third-party vendor. So there are wild swings in the reliability of ALPR. And one of the things we want to consider is if we can't review that third-party vendor, should we even be purchasing that technology? Next slide, please.
A quick note, Jacob, if you keep it within 5 minutes, not to rush.
You got it. So the last thing I'd like to highlight is Ubicquia builds a lot of its models on using AI, and AI doesn't train itself, right? As a tech worker, it requires hundreds of people reviewing and tagging like videos and then going through machine learning processes in order to train AI models. So we'd be allowing terabytes of San Diego's data into the hands of hundreds of people who we cannot vet, and allowing it out of the minimum number of hands necessary needed to like solve a crime. That is particularly dangerous in the current political climate. This data would identify people attending mosques, people seeking reproductive care, people seeking immigration services, and there's a lot of temptation to leak that data by those engineers. So I want to end by saying you're the best privacy professionals in the city, and your expertise is unmatched. You're not being given all the necessary information to do your job effectively, and I recommend that you do not endorse this. Thank you.
Next slide, please. All right, like I said earlier, my name is Lucky Aiden. I'm the youth organizer at PANA, so I work directly with community and youth in District 9, and I'll be going over the community harms that streetlights and ALPR have. Next slide, please. So who's being watched? Well, if these technologies is installed, all of San Diegans, whoever walks, drive, or passes by these cameras will be watched and recorded. Anyone who travels to San Diego will be recorded. As Nancy mentioned above, those women that are seeking health reasons as well will be recorded. And Black and Brown communities will be disproportionately under the microscope compared to other communities. Next slide, please. The impact that it has on the immigration communities. ALPR on impact that has on the immigration community like mine is very real. What I have seen with my work at PANA is that we have many community members who have different immigration statuses living in one household. So for example, under one family, they can have children who are citizens, but parents that are undocumented, or are asylum seekers who currently don't have immigration statuses are severely risked if these technologies are going to be placed within our community. SB 54 clearly states that local law enforcement should not collaborate with CBP or ICE for the purpose of immigration enforcement. But what we have seen with ALPR is that time and time again, local police departments share this data with immigration enforcement and other federal agencies that have a history of invading our rights. And research has shown that ICE is able to effectively bypass laws like SB 54 when it comes to technologies like this. We also witnessed here locally in Chula Vista when their police department adopted ALPR that shared their information with over 800 different enforcement agencies, including CBP and ICE. Another harmful impact that ALPR has is when a Black woman and her children were wrongfully identified by ALPR and held at gunpoint in Colorado. And as a Black woman in America, it's very triggering because I don't know if these technologies are going to be how it's going to harm me and my family. Next slide, please. The impact that it has on the marginalized communities. As you can see here, these are the placements of the streetlights that you can find directly from San Diego Police Department's proposal PowerPoint. As you can see, there are more streetlights south of the 8 compared to the more affluent north of San Diego. And by its placement of these technologies to surveil our community is a significant concern. We have seen in places like New York, where their police department placed license plate readers in front of mosques. And as a Muslim woman in America, the impacts and implications that this technology will have on not only me, but the people of my community is tremendous. Post 9/11, our every move. Can I continue?
Some closing statements, maybe the next one more slide or two.
Oh, okay. Let me just finish this one then. As like I was saying, post 9/11 our community members' move has been monitored. So this is exactly what this technology is doing. It's putting pieces together and creating a story that's not who we really are. So I urge you, the Privacy Advisory Board, to not recommend this and reject the proposal. Thank you. And next slide, but I don't think we have time. First Amendment impact. So the police department pulled footage on BLM protesters violating their First Amendment rights. How can we ensure that this is not going to happen in the future? Next slide. And this is what community said could help them make them feel safe. Just put up actual streetlights, invest in community violence interrupters, invest in youth and after-school programs, and fund actual community-led organizations that are already doing the work to lower crime rates in our neighborhood. Next slide. So if you have, that's all for our presentation. If you have any questions, that's all, can answer them as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trust SD. The presentation in full is posted on the PAB website. We have one comment in person, Blair Beekman.
Hi, thank you. This was a really good lecture. Thanks a lot. It was nice to hear. I'm learning for the first time the concepts around, believe it or not, that with the smart streetlights, the use of ALPRs, they can be those mounted cameras as shown. They can also be cameras within the smart streetlights themselves. And I think we have to be clear on that subject matter and know what we're working with. And it's a lot. Ubicquia, it's been explained to me during the police lectures of a few months ago. They own the tech, the data collection tech from all previous years now and currently. So those are a lot of questions and availability of smart streetlight tech that's available to use at this time. I hope we really are considering that we can use less amounts of ALPR than the current 375, and that we have those conversations here today. Thank you.
We'll now move to online comment. For item number 4, starting with caller ending in 8731.
All right, so that one caller who said, contact the city council. Those traitors think submachine guns for police are defensive equipment. So who does the police work for when they're trying to track us with tech they know doesn't stop crime and rarely even solves crime, a lousy 1%? Stupid smart streetlight maker Ubicquia has a white paper entitled Balancing Public Safety and Privacy. That's the main problem in this country today, compromisers of rights. You want people to know that Trust SD is affiliated with extremist organizations such as PANA, Black Lives Matter, and the Democratic Socialists, just to name a few. But no matter other political maneuverings, one thing that everyone can agree on is the right to privacy. That's why every person in this country needs to become an American. That's right, I said become. And you do that by knowing your creator endowed rights. Read the Constitution for the United States of America. It's the first document in the world that said people were born free. If you don't know those rights and claim those rights, then you have no rights. Don't expect any organization or leader to protect your rights for you.
Thank you. That concludes your time. Moving to the original.
The negligence going on is off the charts. There is absolutely no transparency when all of the things that the police are saying are, wishy-washy, and they're saying it's going to be 500 cameras, and then it's really 1,000 cameras. This is absolutely atrocious because there is no way at all that you'll ever be able to make sure that the data that's being collected isn't going to be used against all the people, and everyone is being surveilled. So you guys, as you're claiming that you're going to be a privacy advisory board, then you should be doing things to protect the privacy of every individual. And if you let this go into the city council and be approved, saying that you think that this should go forward without addressing all of these transparency issues and conflicts that are being raised, then this should not go through.
Thank you. Your time is up. Just a reminder to folks in the queue raising your hand, this is for item number 4 on the Trust San Diego presentation. The board will take up the smart streetlight item on item number 6. Next up, we have Ramo Abdi.
Hi, good evening. My name is Rahma Abdi. I'm calling. Can you hear me?
Can we hear you?
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Rahma Abdi. I'm the director of organizing campaign at PANA, the Partnership for Advancement of New America. I'm also a member of District 9. My community, which is largely made up of Black Muslim refugee communities, are at risk of being targeted by surveillance technology and being exposed to unjust enforcement of effort. I'm here today to say I do not support a use of automated technology because it further increased the harm my community will face when damaging decisions are made because of an error from the computer creating a false justification. And I urge you not to recommend this. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next speaker, Yadi.
Hi, in addition to echoing other commenters, I encourage the public to tell Sacramento they support surveillance tech regulation bills currently being heard. ALPR regulation bill AB 1463, sponsored by Oakland Privacy, which further regulates the retention period to 30 days. AB 1034, sponsored by ACLU, which will continue the moratorium in use of facial recognition technology on police body-worn cameras. And AB 1486, sponsored by AFSC, to further clarify requirements under AB 481 regarding the regulation of military equipment used such as drones, autonomous vehicles, and firearms. All these bills have passed the Assembly and are currently being heard in the Senate. Please, San Diego, call in and support. Thanks.
Thank you. Moving to our next speaker, Ilka.
It would help if I unmute, correct? One, thank you very much. And I do actually want to echo the fact that this is a volunteer advice. I think it's volunteer, but it is an advisory board. And the woman who suggested call Marnie, call Stefan, those are the enemies. Okay, we should not have surveillance equipment on our streetlights. It is not effective, and I'd like to, I don't have the exact numbers, but I'd like to bring up the CLERB study where they compared Blacks, Hispanics, and whites when they were pulled over and they were searched. And in the Black category, under 10% had paraphernalia of some sort on them. Hispanics had approximately 20%, and white Americans had 87% of paraphernalia. And in Germany, when these type of technology was being used, there were about 87% of the tickets that were ineffective. This is the wrong technology, and it is an invasion of people's rights.
We have 3 more speakers in the queue for item number 4. Our next speaker is Catherine Douglas.
License plate readers are critical technology needed to quickly and fairly solve serious crimes such as homicides, carjackings, human trafficking, kidnapping, felony assault, assault with a weapon, serious injury collisions, hit and run, fatal collisions. I want these crimes solved quickly and fairly, and so do victims and their families. This technology does not record on any private property. Access to video is tightly controlled. It does not include facial recognition. It is not used for immigration purposes. Anyone adverse to smart streetlights and license plate readers is either aiding and abetting criminal activity or has failed to do their research to truly understand how, when, and why this technology is used. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our next speaker, we have 2 more in the queue. Eric Anderson.
Hello. The Trust Coalition did a lot of work putting together slides and visual aids for this presentation, but the camera was pointed in the wrong direction. The public, who is entitled to transparency, did not get a chance to see them. Now that you're aware of this issue, now that you are aware of this issue, please do not turn the camera to show the visual aids of the opposition. Okay, and also none of the video from the last month privacy advisory board meetings have been available to the public. So that is a concern as well. Thank you.
Moving to our next speaker, we have 2 more speakers in the queue for item 4. Layla Aziz.
Hello, my name is Layla Aziz. Can you hear me?
Yes, please make your comments.
First, I want to thank the Trust SD Coalition for the presentation. I hope that the advisory board really listens to what they're saying regarding the deep concerns. And also, I really hope that the advisory board takes in consideration of where these street lights will be and the communities that will be affected. As I listen to a lot of the comments, and I can't tell where a person lives based on their comment, but people strategically aren't saying the district they live in. And some of us have more streetlights in our districts, and we don't want any. So I am Layla Aziz, and I live in District 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving to our final speaker on item number 4, Alliance San Diego.
Hi, my name is Erin Surmoto Grassi. I'm Policy Director at Alliance San Diego. And Alliance San Diego is a member of the Trust SD Coalition. So we really want to thank the Trust SD Coalition for the presentation and calling in support of the position outlined by the Trust SD Coalition. I do want to briefly mention regarding the streetlights and regarding one of the previous speakers, there are numerous problems with smart streetlights and how it disproportionately impacts those of us in communities of color. I can speak to it directly. Where I live, for example, I cannot leave my house without having to pass by a smart street light. There is no way that I can go for a walk, go for a run, drive to work. And even when I drive to work, there are smart street lights right in front of our office. And so I think it's really important that this body take into consideration the disproportionate impact this has on communities of color. And I will also speak to, because I have spent many years watching the implementation of Senate Bill 54. And I'll just mention that there are numerous occasions where there have been immigration consequences.
Thank you.
Thank you. Your time's up. Our last speaker is Genevieve Jones-Wright.
Hello, my name is Genevieve Jones-Wright. I'm the Executive Director of Community Advocates for Just and Moral Governance, or MOGO, and we are proud founding members of the Trust SD Coalition. I want to thank the coalition for amplifying the voices of impacted community members. And I take umbrage with some of the comments that were made that were directed towards our immigrant community members. And one of the commenters who talked about membership in the Trust SD Coalition and people who would be against this type of technology. So I thank this board for allowing Trust SD to make this presentation, because these are the things you all have to consider. When we talk about why Trust SD was formed in the very first place, it was because we could not trust what law enforcement even told city council members. I asked this board to look behind what law enforcement says, and you
If that's all for the public comment, we will continue on to any board discussion and questions for the presentation.
I had a quick question for the Trust Coalition. I know that the Trust Coalition has done a number of meetings kind of throughout San Diego, meeting with the public, and we're able to do more meetings than we were as a committee, but even then the outreach that was done by the San Diego Police Department. Can you give us a general kind of number of how many meetings and how many people you've reached out to, and what were some of the major concerns of community members that came to these meetings brought up to you?
Thank you, Seth Hall with the Trust SD Coalition. The coalition has been doing community meetings since before the ordinance was even proposed in 2020. And so we've been doing physical community meetings. We've been doing virtual community meetings recently since the board began hearing this item. We've done a couple of events. I would be hard pressed to report back to you any community sentiment beyond the concern. It's often a lot of the concerns that you heard tonight from commenters and my predecessors. There's additionally concerns about how well the police department is positioned to actually control this technology. I guess I'm struggling to recall, a strong sense of support. We've educated a lot of people about surveillance, and in general, I think we've just constantly run into a lot of concern about this technology.
I also had a question for Trust SD. Thank you for the presentation. I thought there were some very insightful points that came from the presentation. And I had a question regarding the effectiveness of the program. The presentation pointed out that there were 86,729 people who had their license plates read, and out of those only 37, there was an actual hit of 37 out of that number. So I'm just curious to know, is your organization familiar with any systematic studies that have looked at the effectiveness of this technology besides the numbers that were mentioned here?
Yeah, we are. If you look up a study of ALPR from, it's called the Independent Institute, they did a study of the effectiveness of ALPR. I believe the title of the report includes the word failure, so that might give you a sense of kind of what they came up with. But that Independent Institute report was very thorough, I thought, and presented a lot of numbers. And so generally speaking, I think what you'll find as you review the literature of ALPR, even among those who you might think would be its proponents, would be that the technology struggles with the concept of effectiveness, and that might be because of what people mean when they say effectiveness. People have perhaps a vision in their mind of what this technology is going to be effective for, and that may not totally align with what the technology actually does, right? So I think we may be imagining that this technology can readily provide solutions for the problems we think it can, and in fact, it's not designed for that.
We have one more question myself. In the presentation, I thank you for the amazing presentation. It was very insightful, and the work that you guys do on the behalf of the community is always acknowledged. I believe one of the slides, I think the last slide mentioned what would help you feel safe in your community and what the money for the smart streetlights and the ALPR technology could potentially be better served for, including funding mental health, social services programs, funding youth centers, investing in community violence interrupters, funding community-led organizations that are already working on lowering crime rates. In conjunction with that, if you look on the PAD website, one of the items was a set of questions the board gave to the police department. They were thankful enough to go through that and answer as thoroughly as they could. The question that I'm referring to is in that same vein, and it reads, per the San Diego Police Department procedure, regular operation of ALPR should be considered as a force multiplying extension of an officer's regular patrol efforts. A common theme among victims of crime in San Diego is that the department can sometimes be too understaffed to more quickly respond to crimes when the department is notified of a crime. And then go on to say, what kind of analysis was done to ensure that the funds used for smart streetlights and ALPR can be better served or to funding more officers? And the answer, which is available, by the way, on the website, goes into, it breaks down police officer hours and how that relates to the hours that the ALPR technology could provide in that conjunction. So I ask you, Seth and Trust SD, what do you have to say about the effectiveness of actual police officer hours versus the effectiveness of this widespread monitoring? And is this really, do you believe this be effective use of the time and efforts?
I think the effectiveness question, as far as it goes with police, is maybe better handled by police. I'm not a police officer. I don't want to try to speak for them, but I want to point out that there are people in this room who have experienced the effectiveness of this technology. They were scanned falsely by ALPR. They and their families were pulled out of their vehicle on the highway with guns held to their head. They're in this room. Okay, these were activities that shaped the work of the people that experienced this. So force multiplier, effective, these are words that are being used, and I'm not entirely sure that they're being appropriately defined. These algorithmic machines can make mistakes. They can cause problems. If they've ever solved a problem, I have no doubt that mass surveillance, if you put up mass surveillance everywhere, you know, that you might solve a couple problems while you create an entirely new host of more serious problems. So I would, thank you. I would just quibble with the, I would ask the board to consider what we mean by effectiveness and exactly what kind of forces are we multiplying.
Thank you. That's all the questions that the board has. Oh, sorry.
Can you speak a little bit of, the Trust Coalition was actually involved, I believe, in creating this ordinance that was, that we're now, that results in us sitting here now and people from the public coming to speak to. Can you talk a little bit about what the intention of this ordinance actually is and what the purpose of the Privacy Advisory Board is as written by the Trust Coalition and voted and accepted on by the council, city council.
Actually, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to the board about how we envisioned this when the community really got together and wrote it. And that was that people just like you would be up here doing exactly this work. Experts, 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 community experts, technology experts, privacy experts, experts in business and law. This is exactly what we had in mind, so that that your perspectives can inform this advice and go to city council with a more robust, more comprehensive view of this technology than they would have otherwise ever had. Before you all sat, the city council was trying to do this job themselves. Are the city council members technology experts? No, right? Are they experts in controlling how processes work? No, they are not experts, and it has cost taxpayers dearly in that environment. So that's what you all are here for, and we're really glad you are here. However, one thing that is certainly not the intention of the ordinance was for the city to bring some kind of categorical explanation of surveillance to you, some kind of vague thing saying, we want to use the technology we want to use. It might be any technology, but it fits inside this like word box. And so you need to consider that without actually knowing who we're talking about, without actually knowing what it does, without knowing where it comes from or where the data is going. You just need to advise on that. That was not the intention. You are supposed to be considering facts, details, specific vendors, specific products, and it's very important. I hope that you all are able to get there at some point.
I have actually one last question. Going back to part 3 of the presentation, which I believe was entitled, Who's Being Watched? Just from your perspective, from your organization's perspective, we hear the argument by law enforcement that there's more crime in Black and brown communities. And that's why we need more cameras in those parts of town. Can you talk about your response to that, and then maybe the disproportionate effect of putting those cameras in Black and brown communities? What is that? What's happening there?
Sure. I think you're hearing, there was a commenter who came before me who said that she was speaking from District 4. I think you're hearing from people in those communities. I think you are hearing voices from those communities at this microphone. When you say, or when police tell you that there is more crime in those neighborhoods, first of all, it's important for us to all look back at the last 2 and 3 years and look at the reports of crime. The last 2 and 3 years have been very important because prior to those 2 and 3 years, we had a lot of mass surveillance technology up like Streetlights and ShotSpotter and ALPR, but then they were shut down. So if we're going to talk about more crime, let's look at the crime statistics. What do they look like? Crime went down. Does crime go down when mass surveillance stops? Is there a direct connection there? I can't answer that question for you, but the vision that is being cast here that mass surveillance somehow can impact crime, if that's true, then we should probably take a look at exactly what impact mass surveillance does have on crime. That said, neighborhoods that experience crime are experiencing crime, as far as I've learned, from a host of different factors that have nothing to do with mass surveillance. You're not going to mass surveil your way out of poverty. You're not going to mass surveil your way out of underinvestment in neighborhoods. You're not going to mass surveil your way out of limited opportunities for youth. There's no technology that you can throw up on a light pole that's going to fix that, except maybe a light might help, right?
Thank you. One more question.
Yeah, and this is my final question, I promise. You mentioned the fact that not only did the Trust Coalition write this ordinance, but they wrote this ordinance in congruence with the community itself. And so it's one of those few cases, I think, where we see local government actually working with people and passing an ordinance that is there not only to serve the interests of the larger community, but to serve the interests of council members who will be making very important decisions when it comes to technology that many of us are still grasping with. As an author, as one of the authors of this ordinance, in the bylaws under Article 2, duties and functions, the second kind of one of our privacy advisory board shall says, sorry, it's the third point under duties and functions, review surveillance impact reports and surveillance use policies for all new and existing surveillance technology and make recommendations prior to the city seeking solicitation of funds and proposals for surveillance technology. As I'm sure you're aware, the mayor has already included the funds for this, a request for the funds of this in his budget that he went to city council, and the city council has approved that request. Again, sticking to the intention of this ordinance itself, do you feel like the mayor has already violated the ordinance as written?
It's a bit of a legal question. You're asking if the letter of the law may have been violated. I can answer the spirit. I can answer the spirit of the law. The law was intended to say that while the city of any department, by the way, let's make sure that we're all remembering that this was never an anti-police ordinance. It encompasses all departments, which I'm sure you have yet to hear from many. That when the departments want to use surveillance, they tend to go out and do their research on that, and then they have specific types of technology they want to acquire. And the spirit of the ordinance was that the proposal would come to the board prior to any official activity, taking place, within that department. My understanding of the budgeting process is that the budgeting process can be somewhat optimistic and future looking, and it doesn't always work out. So I'm not sure whether the mayor budgeting something violates the ordinance. However, if any department has engaged a vendor, and gone down the road of acquisition with them prior to getting city council approval to do so, I think that would potentially be a problem that would need to be looked at.
I think that'll do it for item 4. Thank you very much, Seth. Thank you very much, Trustee. All right, item 5, action discussion recommendation City Council on smart streetlights and ALPR technology. First up, we have the first pass review subcommittee presentation. Take it away, Pega.
Thank you. So the first pass, can we get the slides up, please? First pass review committee consisted of, the city's asking for a 5-minute recess.
By the way, hand it over to Chair of the First Pass Review Subcommittee.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Pegah Parsi. I'm the Vice Chair of the PAB, and I was the Chair of the First Pass Review Committee. Can we go to the next slide, please? The subcommittee consisted of these fine folks that are listed here. Next slide, please. The proposal timeline that you see here was presented already at last month's meeting. I just added what's happened since the May 31st, which was we extended another invitation to the police department and submitted some additional follow-up questions. By June 16th, we had not heard back about our invitations to speak with the PD. And yesterday, on June 21st, the PD did provide some written responses to our questions. The subcommittee, there were 4 of us, we were split. And so we had 2 different options. There was no breaking that tie. So we brought it here to the rest of the committee for their consideration and discussion. The first memo that you will see online, posted online, is option number 1, and that is to recommend approval of the 2 use policies as written without any modifications. The second memo that you will see is option number 2, which is recommend rejection because the documents did not comply with the ordinance. Next slide, please. I should be clear, the people that wrote the 2 memos were were the proponents of those. So there was no sort of intermingling of those memos. The folks that wanted option number 1, which was recommend approval, are not here today, but these were their reasons. They thought that all of their questions had been appropriately answered and that the PD had shown sufficient due diligence. And they thought the program design was sufficient to serve San Diegans. The folks that worked on the second memo, option number 2, went through the ordinance and noted substantive concerns and non-compliance with the ordinance. That included things like not knowing who the ALPR vendor is. That included insufficient smart streetlight information. As required by the ordinance, you'll see the ordinance sections listed right beside them. We also found that there were insufficient mitigations, insufficient security information, insufficient third-party dependencies. We'll ask about that when the PD comes up for questions later. There were no alternatives that were explored as part of the impact assessment. And the track record of the technology was not explained. We also had substantive concerns with the use policy. That is a different part of the ordinance. With that, we saw that the purposes and goals of this technology were unclear. The uses were not limited, they were broad. There was insufficient information about the data collection mechanisms and the types of data that are being collected. Access was not limited. There were insufficient security safeguards and no information regarding data sharing. Next slide, please. We also noted some other substantive concerns. Those first two that I listed were substantive concerns with the impact report and the use policy, but there were other concerns. One of them is we have not seen any contracts nor proposed contracts to review to make sure that the vendors can actually comply with whatever would be in the use policy. We didn't quite understand the location selection criteria. There were no metrics or review process provided, going back to the conversation about effectiveness. We don't know what would count as this being effective. We were unclear about what sort of AI was involved in this project. The efficacy of the program was also unclear. And as the community pointed out numerous times, there was a lack of trust in the SDPD. We note also some process concerns, the main one being that community input was limited due to lack of translation services from the city. We will thank the members of the community that did volunteer to help us with some translation. There was also a lack of collaboration between the city and the PAB, really, as well as the SDPD. Like I said, we did try to meet with them several times to hash out some of the questions that we had, and that just didn't materialize. A very, very important piece of this is about the ordinance timeline. And I want to clarify what this issue is. So the ordinance requires that a city unit that wants to use a surveillance technology provide a notice to the chair, Ike here, provide a notice along with a surveillance impact report, as well as a use policy. All three of those have to be together. The ordinance also defines what is supposed to be in an impact report and what is supposed to be in a